Now this right here, this one's going to be heavy. And if you're from New Orleans or anywhere in Louisiana, this one's going to hit even harder. Because what if I told you that one of the most loved, most represented, and most respected mascots in the country has a hidden connection to one of the darkest days in Louisiana history? Yep, the LSU Tigers. But what do they have to do with a massacre? Sit back, because this is going to be a good one. It was July 30th, 1866. Slavery was technically over, but if you thought white supremacists were just going to sit back while black folks demanded rights, think again. A group of mostly black men, many of them Union veterans, gathered to push for voting rights in Louisiana. They were trying to reopen the state's constitutional convention and fix what the 1864 Free State Constitution didn't: black suffrage. And suffrage is basically just the right to vote. They weren't asking for favors, they were demanding what they earned. They fought for this country, and they wanted a voice in it. And where did all of this take place? The Mechanics Institute, a building that once stood proudly on Common Street, just off Canal Street in downtown New Orleans. Today, that site is home to the Roosevelt Hotel, a luxury hotel with brunch, spa days, and cocktails, built on top of black bloodshed. Most folks who check in have no idea they're standing where a massacre happened. But let's talk about who helped make this happen. One of the key figures behind this massacre, Harry T. Hayes. He wasn't just any Confederate general. He led a brutal unit during the Civil War called the Louisiana Tigers, a brigade infamous for their aggression, fearlessness, and wild behavior. These weren't your average soldiers. They were rowdy, they were reckless, and after the war, instead of being disgraced, the name Louisiana Tigers became something else: Southern pride. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. In the late 1800s, LSU adopted the name Tigers for its football team. At first glance, it just sounds like a fierce mascot. But by World War I, LSU's football media guys explicitly said the name was chosen to honor Louisiana soldiers who fought under General Robert E. Lee. In other words, the same Louisiana Tigers Harry T. Hayes led. So depending on who you ask, the LSU Tigers are either just a powerful emblem of athletic pride or a repackaged piece of a darker past. In full disclosure, I'm a proud graduate of LSU. I wore purple and gold with pride, so this ain't a shot. It's just the truth, the story we were never told. Now back to the story. In 1866, that same Harry T. Hayes was now sheriff of Orleans Parish, and when tensions started rising, he deputized nearly 200 ex-Confederates, many from his old brigade, under the banner of keeping the peace. But what they actually did was help lead one of the bloodiest attacks on black people in Louisiana history. And then it happened. That morning, 27 delegates were inside the Mechanics Institute. Outside, black supporters, some in uniform, some waving American flags, marched peacefully. But then came the mob. Ex-Confederates, firemen, local police, armed, ready, and not there to protest. They came to kill. Gunfire rang out, people were chased inside, police shot through windows, stormed the building, and opened fire on unarmed men. One of the supporters of black suffrage, Reverend Jotham Horton, a white chaplain, tried to surrender. He waved a white handkerchief. They assassinated him anyway. People jumped from windows just to escape, only to be gunned down or beaten in the streets. And the worst part, some of the police led the charge. When word got out, General Philip Sheridan, who wasn't even a supporter of the convention, couldn't ignore what happened. He reported it back to General Ulysses S. Grant, and he didn't hold back. It was not a riot. It was an absolute massacre by the police. Over 40 people were killed, and most of them black. More than 100 were wounded. And this wasn't done in the dark. This happened in broad daylight, downtown New Orleans. By the next morning, the white newspapers already had their spin. They called it a Negro riot. They said the police were just doing their jobs. But black newspapers like the New Orleans Tribune, who's still in business today, they told the truth. A black Union vet named Octave Bro testified that he overheard the plan to attack days before it happened. So no, it wasn't spontaneous. It was organized, it was calculated, and it was approved. And then they tried to bury it, not the bodies, but the truth. Even with eyewitnesses, even with military officials calling it a massacre, even with the black press exposing what really happened, they buried the story. And just like that, they tried to erase it from public memory. But some of the names never made it into history. When the hospital records came out, the list of victims was long: gunshot wounds, broken bones, head trauma. Many never made it out alive. But what stood out the most? All the names marked unknown. Not one, not two, dozens. And every one of those unknowns had a story, a family, a life before that day. Some were black Union veterans, men who survived the Civil War only to be killed by their own people in their own city. We don't even know if they were all marching. Some might have just been walking by, or looking out the window, or trying to help someone who was hurt. Did the violence stop at the march? Or did they go through the neighborhoods hunting down anyone black? We may never know. But what we do know is that some families never got closure. They never got a body, never got a name in the paper, just silence and rumors. And for many of them, that silence lasts generations. On July 30th, 2024, exactly 158 years later, a historical marker was finally unveiled on the site, right there at the Roosevelt Hotel. City leaders, community leaders, and everyone showed up. And for the first time, public apologies were made for the role police played, for the lies that followed, for the violence that was allowed to happen. And this wasn't just violence, it was a wake up call. It showed the world how far white supremacists will go to silence black political power. And it forced Congress to act. What came next? Reconstruction Acts, the 14th Amendment, the removal of the mayor and corrupt city leaders. And for a time, black political power grew across the South. Like I said before, I didn't only go to LSU, I graduated from LSU. So this ain't about bashing a school, it's about telling the full story. Because for too long, people have tried to erase history, or rewrite it, or just leave out the ugly parts. What I'm doing is putting the pieces back together. When you start connecting the dots, from Confederate militias to deputized violence to a football mascot turned symbol of pride, it makes you wonder, what else haven't we been told? Every time you like, comment, or share, you help bring stories like these to life. Thanks again, and remember to subscribe for more stories that they don't put in your textbooks.